We're back. All right, this is Chris G, A Titan's Tale, where we inspire empires. And today I've got Nicole Richards with us today. Nicole is a personal reinvention and life alignment coach, and she has some stories to tell about her ventures as a entrepreneur. And so let's welcome Nicole Richards. Welcome.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about yourself a little bit, Nicole, before we get into your stories?
Oh my goodness, I love working with people who want to build and they want to grow. So I actually work with leaders and entrepreneurs who have seen their own success. They've built really great careers, but they don't feel like they're having the fulfillment that they thought they would, and they might need to pivot. And so we have conversations about what could possibly be next.
Okay. Well, I see here personal reinvention. So assuming somebody's got a job or working maybe in a solopreneur type thing,
Mhm.
what is how do you reinvent yourself?
Oh my goodness. So I actually went through this process. Do you want to go into my story?
Sure.
Okay. So I was a makeup artist for over 22 years. I worked in film and music videos, but my big splash was in the wedding industry. So I had a team of 15. I had a makeup studio, and I grew my tiny little thing into this six-figure monster. And I call it a monster because weddings are they look really pretty, but in the background, there's a lot going on.
The high pressure.
Um,
Um, well, my daughter's getting married in October, and anyway, I can imagine.
there's a lot going on. And as that career went on over the years, it became very interesting because when I started in the 90s, people were planning their weddings for the 500 people or the 200 people that they invited. But nowadays, these young people are planning their weddings for Instagram. And that will sound very crazy to many Gen Xers, but that's basically what I watched the evolution of starting to happen. And for those who were really up leveling in their wedding planning, they were often planning to be published in a magazine. And so again,
Oh
there's
my.
some of y'all are going to be just shaking your head going, what are you talking about? But trust me, that's what was happening. So there was a lot of money at stake, and it could be very stressful, but I really thrived on making those experiences perfect as I possibly could for my brides. And I became known as somebody who would take care of business. You'd have a good morning, you would enjoy your services, and you were going to look amazing for your photos. So that was a fantastic career. I would say I was in my Michael Jordan era when I felt a divine prompting. I'm a believer. So for those of you that may not understand what I'm about to say next, just track with me for a minute. In 2018, I really felt the divine intervention to pivot and go in a different direction. But I didn't know what direction I was supposed to go in. And so I wrestled with God for a couple of months, and I said, okay, I told everybody I'm going to close my studio. And they were like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And this is how I made my living. So it really didn't make sense. I thought that I was going to pivot my business in a different way. And instead, I fired my business coach and closed my makeup studio. It took about a year and a half to wind my business down because people would book their weddings a year to a year and a half in advance. And in 2019, on New Year's Eve, I provided my last makeup service. And that was the end of that year. And so, Chris, do you remember what happened 3 months later after December 2019?
Oh, yes, I do. Well, I guess it was already started apparently, but it didn't get crazy until March of 2020, I believe.
Exactly, right. And
Yeah.
so the entire world shut down. And I looked back at my career behind me and said, oh my gosh, did I just get saved from the disaster that many other people had to go through? And so to go back to your question of what does a process of reinvention look like, what does a person do when they have quite a career and they are living the dream that they wanted to live, and then all of a sudden everything changes? It can be very confusing. It can be very lonely because you are the one who's going through it, and a lot of people don't understand. I had people who told me, I really admire your career. And so then it's like, I admire my own career. I wanted this dream. I built this dream. What in the heck am I supposed to do now? And so the process of reinvention is really taking what you're good at and figuring out how to use that to help other people. And that's what I did. Most people would look at me and say, well, I was really good at doing makeup, but underneath that, there was a whole business that was being run and put together. So what I became really good at is building teams, being
Hmm.
creative with messaging, listening to my clients to figure out what it is that they wanted and what they were trying to achieve with their hair and makeup service. And I was able to take those skills of listening, building business, and crafting good messages and turn that into the business I have today as a coach. Now, when you're reinventing yourself in your 40s, that is a tricky thing. But I took myself through a process that I call now the ultimate life audit, and went through a process of reinvention. And when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I did have to completely reinvent myself. My marriage dissolved, so I had to reinvent who I thought I was. I had to decide who I was going to be and then go forward from there.
That's the answer I was looking for. But I got to ask you something different because I'm guessing my listeners are thinking the same thing. But this is important for entrepreneurs, anybody in that matter, in the business. If you're an owner, what is your long-term goal? Meaning, what do you plan to do when you get to a certain point? Whether in your case you have a divine intervention, or you're ready to retire, or whatever. Why wasn't selling the company an option for you?
So the company name was my name.
Hmm.
And selling it, I don't know if I even thought about, I think because it was my name. Let me back up for a minute. There's another person that I worked with in the industry, and she had a very lucrative wedding planning business. And we had this conversation about selling and what that would look like. And she actually renamed her company because she thought if she ever needed to sell it, she didn't want it to be her name. So when I closed my business, it was still my name. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I had enough guidance or patience, or maybe there was too much life happening to figure out what it would look like to sell the bones of the business without my name attached to it.
Sure. And that's important for people to realize that. And I've done the same thing. Um, I had a name of a business, online business, and I was calling it one thing, and I thought, no, that we don't want to go that route right now. So we changed it to a more. Um, I had a different business. And I kind of used that name in a different way, but um, didn't use my name because it was. Um, it's easier to turn it over to somebody else. You're right. So
Mhm.
that makes sense. Building teams, and that's really how you grow, isn't it? Building
Mhm.
teams,
Mhm.
and don't burn yourself out, I guess. So, what's a good strategy for building teams? And this is for all my solopreneurs out there that you only have so much time in a day. So, how do we build teams, or what's a good way to build a team, Nicole?
A good way to build a team, someone once said, I think this is a famous quote. Many people say this, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And
Mhm.
so the teams that I built and the people that I hired, they were much better at me than I was. Like they were doing makeup at a higher level than I was. But maybe they didn't know how to market themselves or sell themselves. They didn't know how to get clients, but they spent all of their time really mastering their craft. And so I wanted to build a team so that if I wasn't there, if I wasn't like I could have 4 or 5 weddings in a day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I could be at three of them because I was also providing services. So I needed to know, I needed to know that if I left those artists in the hands of my clients, that they were going to be top notch. They were going to be the clients were going to love them. The clients were going to be happy, and I didn't have to be there to micromanage any of it. So if you are looking to build a team, you need to figure out what it is you need and what skills don't you have that somebody else can offer in your business, and then craft your team around that idea. So if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to actually have people that are ahead of you, working for you.
Can you give me an example of when you had to hire? a team member, and then that team member didn't turn out to be who you thought it would be?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I would say one of the challenges that I had, and I don't want to sound pretentious, but
Well,
because of some of the experiences that I had working with high level clients, working in luxury retail stores, working in just in specific environments, you kind of start to pick up the flow and the you're able to read the room, right? And so there were times I had some people that couldn't read the room. They were phenomenal at what they did, but the things that they might say, they were partying last night, you know, like whatever, fill in the blank
sure.
that as an employee you would never want somebody to say to your client, right?
Yeah,
Because it's just not where the client is. And so then I had to tweak. Okay, this person's fantastic. I don't really want to encroach on them and tell them they can't be themselves. So, how can I help them, refine them, and mold them so that it's exactly the kind of artist, that person that I'm looking for? And if I can't coach them into that person, then I know when I go back out to hire somebody, here's what I'm looking for. And they need to fit a particular mold.
sure. And that's in sports that happens all the time, where that person's just not fitting the team, not what we need or what we're looking for, or and sometimes you don't always know,
Mhm.
and they could be excellent at what they're doing, except that just doesn't fit into our game plan. So that happens. The I have two thoughts. You ever heard of the book Who Not How?
No, I haven't.
I wish I could think of the author's name, but there's a book called Who Not How, and it's about growing a business and finding the who, and basically it's not you doing the work.
Mhm.
And then when you're telling your story about being the not the smartest person in the room, there's a story about Henry Ford. Have you heard the story? No. Well, that's good. Maybe some of our listeners haven't either. Well, Henry Ford, he always hired experts. And whatever it was, he had the best. Now he could afford the best. And he didn't want to be the smartest person in the room. He wanted to be in control of the smartest people in the room. And he was questioned one time about something. I think it was some reporters. He was doing an interview, and they asked him a question. They were trying to stump him, and they were trying to make him look like an ass. And he said, "I'll tell you what. You can ask me any question you want, and I'm gonna pick up that phone, and I'll get you the answer from anybody in my company." They all kind of like shut up because he knew he didn't know the answer, but he had somebody on staff that did. So whatever you wanted to ask him, he's going to make it happen. And that just makes me so happy when I hear that. I tell that story about you have the confidence that I've got such a good team, and it's just amazing sometimes. I was talking to some I had an interview the other day, and she was talking about how lucky she was when she got to a point and she realized that I had gotten here with the help of others.
Right.
And you talked about divine intervention. I was listening to a podcast this morning, one of my favorites, the Chronicles, but it has nothing to do with business. But he was talking about his studio group, Merkle Media, and he said everybody just came to him over time. It's like it's nothing that was. It's like everybody just kind of popped in, and he was working with. He was just a truck driver at one point. And here he is working with people with the best in the business,
Mhm.
and he just put it out there, and it all come together. So, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, when we build really good teams around our ideas and around our visions, that's what actually helps move everything forward. Like I could have worked myself to bits and just took all the clients for myself, right?
Right?
But it's way easier to scale and grow if you have a really strong team around you.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned I was reading up on some of your stuff, and that you would tell stories using your makeup and your clothing, your wardrobe, and obviously stories sell.
Mhm.
What? How? I want to ask how do you create a story? I mean, you're doing through imagery, I guess, right?
That was through imagery. Yes.
So, as an entrepreneur, we're wanting to sell a story, obviously, and sell the story, sell the business. How do we go about? Is it through? I, I know it's through branding, but I want today. I think I want to be myself. There was a time back in the day when I was trying to be somebody I wasn't, and that's what I love about the podcast part. I'm me. Here it is. If you like me, fine. If you don't, fine. Were you creating stories that were realistic in the fact that, or are you trying to create Camelot for those brides and stuff? That makes sense.
No, it does. No, the stories were not realistic. The stories were not realistic at all. And the reason I can laugh about that today is because when you're selling, it depends what you're selling. Okay, if someone is a plumber,
Yeah.
the realistic story that they need to sell is that they can help me if my sinks are clogged. If my toilet's backed up, the story that person needs to sell me is that they're basically coming to rescue me, because that's how we feel when a service person comes to help us. What I was doing as a makeup artist with the team of people that I worked with was basically selling the story of perfection. It was perfection fantasy, which none of it is real life. But for this one day, if a woman can feel and look her best on this one day, we will make that story a reality to the best of our ability. We're going to make that story a Camelot story for you. It's only for one day. At midnight, you're going to turn into a pumpkin. We can't guarantee anything after that, but you get to keep
Sorry,
the prince.
sorry, groom. Sorry.
You get to keep the prince, and we're going to create this fairy tale for you. So maybe it was realistic for some, because we worked really hard to do that. We worked really hard to deliver on that storyline and on that promise.
Well, it was definitely special to them, something they wouldn't forget,
Right.
and you created it uh, with what you do, and then the camera person caught it and captured it for so they can always have it. Um, hmm, I was actually, I was going to ask you, and I always try to bring things back to an entrepreneurship, and you were being an entrepreneur as this. So in weddings, you got a lot of things going on. What did you do when something went wrong? Or do you have
Oh,
a story like that? Yeah, I
I
mean, every week, every Saturday, you had something that you had to deal with.
there's lots of I once had an artist who she worked for me, but then she worked in commercials and like TV ads, and she was very busy. And one day she said, "I'm so tired." And I said, "Girl, get it together. We put makeup on people and people pay us to do that. Get it together. Don't complain." How can we complain about this career? Um,
That's all we do. We just put makeup on people.
you put makeup on people, you spray hairspray in their hair, and it sounds, I'm making it sound, I'm making it
Light, but
sound
it's not. I mean, it's
really light and fun. But things did go wrong, and that could be very stressful. So if someone showed up late, if someone showed up, you'd be surprised what alcohol can do to somebody's skin. So I have a
you mean
bride.
like from the night before type thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like you'd be
Oh,
surprised at what can happen. The makeup will literally just absorb, and it's like I'm doing nothing. Um,
oh, wow. I never thought about that, but yeah,
yeah, just
because
all
you're dehydrated and some. I mean, it just sucked it up, huh?
yeah. And so all kinds of things can go wrong. I remember getting to a client's home, and when I got there, they basically had like like floor to ceiling glass around their.
Mhm.
It was a beautiful house, but I could
Yeah.
see that there was nobody in it. And that's a red flag, like massive red. There's no mom puttering around. There's nothing out. And I'm walking up to this door, and then I can see about 4 to 5 recycle bins full of bottles, beer cans, wine bottle. Like they partied the night before, and there's nobody in the kitchen, which means nobody's awake. Right. And so things things like that happen at 5 in the morning. And it's like, and so now
Hello.
we hustle into gear, and we just
Right.
have to pretend everything's going to be fine, even though it's not. But I would say so things like that happened all the time, right? And you just got to go with it. But I would say the biggest problem I had probably about a year and a half before I closed my business is I was about an hour and a half away from home, and my mother called me and she said there was something wrong with my son. And so I'm kind of quarterbacking these phone calls while I'm dealing with my clients. I have 3 or 4 other artists that are working for me that day, and I have to keep excusing myself because I'm trying to figure out what we need to do next. And what happened next is that he needed to be sent to the sick kids hospital. So I'm an hour and a half away from home, which means I'm actually almost 2.5 hours away from the hospital. And long story short, I got to keep a straight face. I have to make sure that this day for these people is like on point, and I got to control all of my emotions. And you have to know, if you're in a medical situation, I am the best person to call because I don't get emotional. I just like, what do we need to do now? Where do we need to go? Tell me what to do. I will make it all happen. But because I was so far away from home and I couldn't control what was happening, I was a total disaster. It was a total disaster. Could not like keep it together. But I kept it together for my client. And then one by one, my artists were finished their jobs. They were finished their clients and they all left. And here I am, the captain going down with the ship. And I'm standing there pinning flowers. I don't do hair. I only do makeup. The hairstylist has left. And I'm pinning these flowers into a 3-year-old's hair. And for any woman out there who's ever touched the hair of a 3-year-old and tried to like do something with it, you know, it's really, really silky and nothing stays. And I'm not a hairstylist. So I'm trying to make these pinned flowers stay in this kid's hair. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me? Because my child is basically being prepped for surgery and I'm pinning flowers into another child's hair. Like what, what are you trying to tell me right now? And so in total, from the first phone call to getting to the hospital, it takes me about almost 5 hours before I can get to my son.
Right.
And there's a lot of lessons to be learned in that. Like when you're running a business and something goes wrong, how do you react? How do your employees see you reacting? How do your customers see you reacting? Within that particular story, my client was a paramedic. Her and her husband were paramedics. If I walked out of that door and said, my artists are going to do your makeup, bride, like they would have understood. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like they've seen medical emergencies. But I don't know if I would have done that any different. My son was in capable hands. I had spoken to the doctor. By the time I got there, he was on a gurney. He had an iPad in his hand, so he was distracting himself. I had gotten an extra debrief from the doctor as to what they were going to do. And then I kid you not, like 5 minutes later, he was wheeled into surgery. So they almost kind of waited as long as they could. And so as an entrepreneur in this like 25-year journey, I had 2 kids, no mat leave. But your love for what you do is the thing that drives you. Your love for what you do can also be the thing that burns you out. And so I advocate for my clients now as this reinvention coach to make sure that as my kids would say, as life is lifing and things are happening, that you find a way to make sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can actually continue to do the thing that you love.
Would you have done anything different in your team building, knowing what you know now?
In my team building, knowing what I know now.
Well, here's one of my thoughts.
Mhm.
A long time ago, I had a boss, and I was next in line. He was the owner of the company, and I was number 2. And he got to go on vacations and everything, which is fine. That's his prerogative. He's a business owner, and I admired that. But he had me there. That he knew if something went bad, I'm there. Would you have somebody like that if you redo it again, that could have stepped in your place and you could have went to your family?
Um,
That's a tough one, I know.
No, and it is, and the challenge is replacing yourself. So what your boss did is he was able to almost duplicate himself
I
I,
know.
I, I didn't get to the point where I could duplicate myself. I had hired a couple of assistants, like office assistants, different
Yeah.
people. That was very difficult for me to try to duplicate myself before I ended that particular business.
And and he was in business for a long time, and I was just top to the rank. So, but yeah, that's a hard thing to do, especially as a small company.
As a smaller company with a service that is highly duplicatable and the barrier to entry is very simple. Like anybody
Mhm.
can go to the drugstore and buy a bunch of stuff and then say that they're a makeup artist. Now they can't necessarily run a business. um,
Yeah,
but yeah, that I found that part to be difficult. And I did go through that process for about 2 or 3 years trying to replace myself. But I don't know if I stuck with it long enough to do that.
I tried one time with my current business. I have a construction company, and I've turned some of it over, but not everything. And I'm trying to find somebody to duplicate me. And I made a mistake, but I thought I'd done that, and that's very hard to do. And then becomes a question of, can you afford yourself?
Right. Right. If I duplicate myself, can we pay both of these salaries
Yeah.
and continue to run the
Will
thing?
it really grow? And you got to turn yourself loose and let them people be them. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
that's a hard to do. I
It
can,
yeah, it is. I've seen people like within the industry that I was in. I've seen people do that, and now I was just on a call with somebody this morning, and they said, in the future, what do you want your business to look like? Do you want to like grow it to 10, $15 million and have 40 employees? And I said, no, like no, no. I'll take the $10 million. I don't want 40 employees. And so it's important for people to know what they want to grow and how big they want it to be based on stage and place in life.
right. The When you're building a team, and I know you probably cook some of the stuff. How do you even tell your current clients or how to motivate the team? I had a discussion with somebody the other day about motivation,
Mhm.
and it's not always money, and we all know that. But if you're new to the business, money's not always the motivator. It is with some people.
It is for some people.
Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong,
Mhm.
and I like money. Most people do,
Mhm.
but it's not always the driver. So what kind of ideas do you promote when you're coaching on how to motivate teams?
It's really important to find out each team member wants out of their current position.
Hmm.
And also, I would be really interested to know what the team member wants in the next 5 to 10 years. It's a difficult question to to answer for most people. Like a lot of people can't even see themselves past 5 or 10 years. But what is it that they actually want? And the reason that that question is important is because if you have a team member and you run a construction company, but your team member wants to go and be a race car driver, then I need to know exactly what this person wants out of working here. Do you just need a job? And so this is going to help you fund your race car driving career? Because if it is, that's great. And if I can help you become this race car driver, that's fine. But I need to know how committed you are to growing the thing that we have right in front of us. Or is this just a placement so that you can go off and do the next thing? And so motivating the team starts with what is it that they want? Well, how do they see themselves in the company? How do they see themselves contributing to the company? How do
Hmm.
they see themselves as a team player? How do they want to interact with their team members? And Chris, within your organization, do you all use any kind of personality tests?
I have in some cases, and I have in others. Just depends on what it was and what we're doing.
Okay. And
Like,
so I have a client who has a construction company,
yeah,
and they do lean very hard on the personality test. But one of the things I realize is when you have a personality test, you have to coach the person based on the results of the test.
that is correct.
So, but this company was not, they had the personality test, they understood the personality of the person, but they hadn't implemented any coaching structure to coach to the personality test so that you can get the most out of the person. And that's like one of the biggest like it's almost like you have a blueprint book to this person. Why are you not using it? like,
Well, I'll tell you, I'm gonna. My construction company is made. My crews are made up of Amish people.
ah,
I couldn't even get them to take a test to begin with, but it's amazing how well they read each other and they know if they want that person on their team or not. That's a whole nother discussion later on. But I have used those many times. I've taken them myself.
mhm.
My question is, which one do you recommend? Because there's quite a few out there.
Oh, there's so many. We work with something called 16 personalities, which is a spin-off of the Myers-Briggs system.
Hmm.
It's more simplified. But my
That's
question for
good.
you, it's a good one. My question for you
Yeah.
is, so your these teams that you have, they're
Uh huh.
built mostly of those people that are Amish, and you
Uh huh.
say that they can read each other. How do you use that to your advantage? Like when you say that they can figure out who they want on their team, how
Well,
do you use that to your advantage?
I pay one more than the others as my foreman
Okay.
because that way I don't have to be there. And I let even Amish or even I let my managers manage. I don't like to be a micromanager,
Right.
but I do communicate with him. And I talk to Junior is his name. I talk to Junior, and we would. It's like, no, he doesn't. He's not really uh, what we want, or he does it this way, or he'll do. And the other guys will, I don't want to say pick on him. They have a unique sense of humor, and but they're not afraid to say what they think either. I don't know if that's just being Amish but they're all similar that way.
Mhm.
And it's just, well, he doesn't work out. We're not going to call him next week. Okay. So they're not employees. They
Mhm.
are contract labor,
Mhm.
which is fine. And there's no ties and they just know. And some of them they know that Amish people are no different than we are in the fact that some are more ambitious than others. Okay. So some of them are there to learn so they can go out on their own. And that's okay. I know I want anybody that wants to improve them in their mind, improve themselves, go
Mhm.
right ahead. Others are there just to do a good job and they work hard like the Dickens, but they're just there for their check.
Right.
And they know that and they're happy about it because they do have a different sense of family than a lot of us English people do, as they call us. And which is quite admirable. And then as I learned and talked to them, I learned that they have a lot of different ways of how they I won't say their finances, but how their family work as a team
Mhm.
and how that's ingrained from the beginning. Do you have any Amish communities where you're at?
I do. There is one that's close by. Yeah.
All right, so if you ever drive out and kind of visit or just drive around, you'll see little kids out working,
Mm.
and that is just part of the culture ingrained. That's just part of the plan, and it's just quite unique. So I'll let those guys do their own hiring and firing type thing. And
Ah.
there's no real firing. It's just we don't call him. And it's easy because they don't have phones. So
I forgot about that part. Yes.
we drop him off. See ya.
So
And then
what's really cool about that, like, yes, you said you don't want to micromanage them, but
yeah.
as the owner, you know that your foreman has a system, and even the other employees have a system
Oh
because
yeah.
they have a teamwork mentality already engraved into how they work and who they are and the culture of who they are, and so they
Yeah.
bring that into work. That's fantastic.
I mean, you got to have whether it's the father figure at the family, or they go in those when they build houses and barns as a group.
Mhm.
There's always leaders because if you don't have a leader, then I mean that's in any business. If you don't have a leader, you can't really follow through, or everybody's doing something and there's too many chiefs, not enough Indian type thing.
Mhm.
So that's pretty clear when you go to uh, a barn raising, and they call it something else, but anyway, it's basically a barn raising. There's a guy in charge. Everybody does it. Well, sometimes you get those conflicts of people wanting to do, and I've had one time. He was a good boy, good worker, but he was always bound determined to do it his way. And so finally, my foreman finally said, "Listen, this is how it's going to be. You got to do it this way." And he accepted that. That's their culture. He accepted it. And so instead of, he always asked questions then. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it this way? So that was one of his ways of retaliating without technically retaliating. Well, finally, some of the other workers got so tired of it, they finally said, "Why don't you shut up?" And I think this was verbatim. "Why don't you just shut up and do it the way Junior said?" That's all you got to do. But that wasn't Junior saying it. That was the other guys who got frustrated. It's like, this is no big deal. Just do it the way he wants it done so we can just get this job and done, because they're more interested in getting it done. They work, I call them my little worker ants, because they just, nobody has to tell anybody what to do. They all know what to do. And that's, I think, from their upbringing. Oh, it's amazing.
You have a
Nobody,
dream team, Chris. That's fantastic.
no, I have been told that several times. Man, they just go. I said, yeah, watch them. And my farmers I take out there, it's like, my gosh. And they said, "What's that going to take you 2 or 3 days?" I said, "Yeah, probably." And I know it's going to take one and a half. And they'll knock it out in a day. And they go, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Yeah." Nobody stands around asking questions. Or if they have a question, they get it answered and they go on. And they don't. And this is what I love. And stay and for all you who's going to manage people, depends on the type of work. I've learned this about my years. Um, some jobs are just monotonous. And if you're going to do with a monotonous job, you have to keep your mind busy, right? Or just drive yourself crazy. Well, one of the things is you can talk to people, or they laugh and they joke, but you don't stop working. I don't care. You can talk all you want, just don't stop working.
Mhm.
And that's what they do. They don't stop. They don't have cell phones, and it's not about the cell phone thing. Um,
They're
that's
not
not really the
distracted.
issue.
They don't sound they're not distracted
They're
people.
not distracted people, and they keep going. And when I used to run a printing company, they were talking about, well, I gotta go to the bathroom, or I gotta have a smoke break, or blah blah blah. I don't care. That's great. That machine does not shut off. Go do what you got to do. Somebody step in your place, step up, because why? Because next time you got to go to the bathroom, that guy's going to step in your place
Mhm.
or have a smoke. And I don't think smoke as much anymore, but they probably do. But anyway, we used to have smoke breaks all the time. And you can smoke a whole pack. I don't care as long as that machine don't shut off and your crew ain't mad that you're out there smoking. If you're all being a team, I don't
Mhm.
care.
Right.
So that's important in my mind, depending on the type of business you're doing.
Mhm.
But the important thing is that allow people to be people as long as they're getting the job done the way you want it.
Yeah, and that is really big to allow people to be people, because you're going to get the best out of them when they are themselves.
Yeah.
To the best of their own ability, when they're themselves, you're going to get the most out of them.
So what else can we chat about today? Burnt out leaders. I know they get burnt out. What's their biggest burnout, you think?
The biggest
Is it,
burnout.
yeah?
So this actually piggybacks off of what we just said. One of the biggest burnouts is them not being able to be themselves. When people end up in like a job situation where they have to keep morphing to fit into the job, and they grow and they become a leader here, and then they become a leader there, and they're growing up the ladder, and they have less and less time to do the things that they want to do, or to be with their family, or to like explore their own interests. And now they feel like, oh, I'm stuck, and now I have this fantastic paycheck. I've got the car, the house, the 2.5 kids. But now, who am I really? And
Yeah.
that who am I really question compounds when people lose their job, because their identities are
Mm,
attached. And that is one of the things that happened to me as well. I realized that my identity was very much attached to the business that I was running. And then I no longer had that business. So twofold: people who are trapped and feel like they can't be themselves in the career that they have, and people who no longer have the career, and now they don't know who they are.
well, sometimes when you don't have a career, it's easier. You're forced to do some things. Like, I gotta figure out what I'm going to do. Is any of your clients current employee, and I say employees, not the owner of a business, and they want to make a change. Do you have any clients like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I have a couple of corporate clients that they've checked all the boxes, they've won all the awards, they've got all the accolades. And now, let me back up for a second. When we're in school, there are milestones, right? You have to hit these
Yep.
milestones in order to move on. And then in university and college, it's the same thing. We're trying to get to this goal of graduating. And
Mhm.
then the next milestone is, okay, we've graduated. Now we need to get the career. And now we have the career. Okay, great. Now I'm starting out. I'm in this cubicle, but now I got to get here because I want to be this of the company, or I want to have that particular income. But what happens when a person gets it? Some people, they thrive on it, right? They're still hustling through it, but there's other people who are like, "Oh, I don't know, like, why am I not feeling like I want to do this anymore?" And what they don't realize is that they've actually hit the goal, they've hit the milestone, and now there's no drive. They were striving to get there, and now I'm already here, and what do I do next?
I like. I'm glad you said that because I like to call it. I started the corporate ladder at the very bottom. I climbed it, except I ran out of rungs. I could not go any higher. Next person was the owner of the company, and he wasn't going to sell it to me. So,
Yep.
and yeah, you just basically get there, and there's no more goals. At least where I was at. So then the goal became, well, I want to be like my boss, but I can't be my boss, so I need to start a business to get to that point.
Right. And so most people they're not aware that they can start a business to get to that point. They're not aware that they can actually create a new goal. So they're stuck in default mode. It's the same groundhog day every single day, but your soul can't handle that every day. You actually have to do something that will inspire you. So we think, okay, well, maybe I'll take the company to a 2% increase next year and that will inspire me. But you did that last year. You actually know that you can accomplish those things. And your soul is in there screaming, what else can we do?
And it frustrates you because um, I ran out of rungs. So I started making my goal uh, more profit for the company. Because more profit for the company not only helped my boss, it helped me because of my bonuses. It helped the people because we had profit sharing. But to do some things, I felt you had to have an investment. Well, my boss decides who invests in what, and rightfully so. And that's frustrating to me because I can't reach my goal because I don't have control over that.
Right.
So your goals have to be something you can control, and that's important. The what you were saying about their own goal, I wanted to say comment on the fact that not entrepreneurship is not for everybody. So just because you're at the top of your ladder or whatever it is, we're not saying here that starting your own business is the solution.
No, and for many people, that could actually be a disaster
Yeah. So
because
I mean,
you have to
yeah,
be driven enough now to figure some things out that you've never. When you work for a company, it's their money. Listen, I had another client who's talked about how they helped their company. It was a small business, and they grew all of these things behind the scene for the company. And he said, I had so much fun doing that. And I said, do you know why you had a lot of fun doing that? You've never really done that before. Because he said it was almost like having my own business. So I said, why was that fun? And he didn't have an answer. I said, it was fun because it wasn't your dime. When you're an entrepreneur, you got to make money like yesterday. Right. And so some of that stuff isn't fun. It just needs to get done because we need to keep the machine going. We need to bring income in. But that was really fun for you because that was somebody else's dime. So we need to just make sure that we understand that, yes, not everybody should be an entrepreneur. And so if not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur and they really should be in the career they're in, you can try to hop to another company, but
yeah,
will that actually give you fulfillment and meaning? So like it's really good to think about that. Maybe you should stay with your company. You've hit the ceiling. There's a glass ceiling. You've hit the glass ceiling. But now then we need to look at your life. So where do you find meaning and fulfillment and creativity and inspiration in your life? And you'd be surprised, Chris, a lot of people don't have hobbies. They don't know what they like to do. They actually have a lot of people have no clue what they like to do.
So possibly one solution would be is in life work balance
Mhm.
could help that person who's there who doesn't want to leave, can afford to leave or whatever it is, and but still burnout's a problem. Whether you're an, an employer, an employee, family member, whatever it is, burnout's an issue that needs to be addressed.
It needs to be addressed. And we address that by finding a way for that person to discover what it is that actually lights them up. Some people have been playing golf for 25 years. Okay, great. That's fantastic. What else do you like to do? What else can you try that might be different? You want to like try to be a golf coach? Who knows? Like what can you do with the thing that you're really good at? And how can you help other people? Most people also don't volunteer enough. They don't take their time and give it to somebody else enough. And that is
Yeah.
another way to find meaning and fulfillment and to feel inspired.
And on that note, sometimes I've heard this before where you go out and you find a hobby that you like and you're really inspired by it. Then you realize that maybe you want to do that full time. And that becomes your new career, your new, not hobby, because a career you're going to make money. Hobbies don't make no money.
Mhm.
They're a lot of fun. But I was listening to a story. One guy loved boats. And he was talking to his accountant how to make boating a business. So he can write off on his taxes. He said, he didn't talk about the business. How can he write his boat off on his taxes? Well, you can't write the boat off your taxes. It's a pleasure thing. So that guy went out and started a business for boats, selling boats, and he started his own business, and then he can write his own boat off. But the point being is that you might find something later once you get your life work balance straightened out. So
Yes, once you give yourself time for yourself and to think about like give yourself time to think most of the time. What is it that I kind of like to do? What do I want to do with my family? And then you create new goals. And then you have something else to work towards.
gotcha. Nicole, thank you. So if I'm a burnout person or entrepreneur, business owner, or even an employee wanting to make some changes, how would they get hold of you?
So my website is nicolerichards.co. And
Hmm.
I'm also on LinkedIn with the same, nicolerichards.co.
Nicole's Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. Surely appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for being a Titan. And any last words?
I've never been called a Titan. Thanks, Chris. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
having me.
You're the Titan of the makeup world.
The former makeup world. Yes. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, guys.